Well, I want to share a word that I've entitled, Let's Keep It Real. Let's keep it real. All right, and it sort of begins with a story, true story. Years ago, checking into a hotel in Melbourne. Sadly, it has to be years ago that happened. And I'm filling in the paperwork, the normal thing, and the receptionist leaning, watching me do that, and he's going, amazing, awesome, fabulous. I'm going, mate, I'm putting my name, address, and email on this piece of paper, bit of overkill. He was, trying to make a boring thing exciting. It's amazing that you can write your name and an address and email. My goodness, this is so exciting. I can barely contain myself. Boy, what a boring life he's living if that's, Anyway, I go for a walk in the mall later on, and I'm sort of just not looking for anything, but just checking out all the advertising that's just hitting me left, right, and center. And it all settled into the same sort of pattern, like this picture up on the screen right now. If we could have that appear. There it is. Okay, so apparently happiness is drinking this gut rot called Coca-Cola. And if you drink it, this good-looking chick turns up magically by your side and life's wonderful. But all the advertising after a while drops into the same sort of vibe. Perfect people with perfect teeth, perfect hair, in this perfect relationship, on this perfect day, planning their perfect holiday, and everything's perfect because we got the perfect job with the perfect salary, and the rest of you guys are losers because you ain't got what we got. You need to go into debt and get what we got, whatever. And the subtle inference is these people are living a great life. They're living great life. And I think, really? Come on, let's keep it real. Is that really what a great life is all about? All this happiness and perfection. Is that really what a great life looks like? Or are we just starting to believe our own hype? Is that really what's happening? Have we got to inflate our language with words like amazing and fantastic and fabulous because we've believed that life's got to be this ecstatic, never-ending smorgasbord of excitement? Judging by your response, you do. All right. It's like, yes. Okay. All right. So I got here just in time. All right. Because, listen, I'm not against happiness. I'm not against good teeth. But if you keep drinking that stuff, you're going to lose it. No, anyway. But if you make happiness the benchmark of a great life, that's what I've got to attain to, the great life. It's a disaster. It's an absolute disaster. All right? Because then if I'm not living that sort of life, if I'm facing challenges, then I am a loser, and I better not let anybody know about it because apparently that's a great life and I don't have it right now. All right? So my message to you goes against this illusion that we're being sold of what looks like a great life, and I'm saying, come on, let's keep it real. We're being sold the illusion that a great life is this endless, ecstatic, amazing ride of excitement and good things happening. No, and I'm not suggesting to you that happiness is a bad thing. I'm just saying that when you make it a goal, it's a disaster. And it's a disaster because it ends up with this self-centered tug-of-war. Oh, by the way, welcome to all the people online. Thank you, Ryan. I remembered eventually. Must have been the way you crossed your legs just then. It just communicated the vibe. He didn't greet the people online. And so I see you there in your PJs. Don't excessively drink that Coke or whatever that you're doing, right? Put the phone away and listen. All right. So back to this. This self-centered tug of war where I'm unhappy with you because you won't sacrifice your happiness to let me be happy. Can you get that? This is when happiness is the pinnacle. Now, I want you to be unhappy so I can be happy. How dare you not sacrifice your happiness? Well, you know what that is? Too many fleas and not enough dog. You're going to kill the dog. Eventually, we're just going to kill the dog. Just everybody pulling on that relationship, nobody giving to the relationship. You're going to kill it, all right? And so again, happiness as a goal of life, the pinnacle, disaster, absolute disaster, because now we will go to great lengths to avoid all the other emotions that actually make us functioning human beings, contributing human beings on the planet. All right? So ironically, happiness turns out to be the one human emotion that offers very little to growing up into mature, responsible, contributing people on the planet. Happiness requires no courage, no sacrifice, and no commitment. It's all about me. Yeah. Well, too many fleas and not enough dog. All right? And you might say, well, okay, David, if the pinnacle of life is not about happiness, then what does a great life look like? Well, I'm so glad you asked, because Jesus gives us a new definition of what a great life looks like, and it looks like this. Greatness is the life you gain when you give yours away. Greatness is the life you gain when you give yours away. And you say, wait a minute, that doesn't sound like a Bible verse. Well, it's there. Jesus said in Matthew 16:25, self-sacrifice is the way, my way, to finding yourself, your true self. He said, whoever wants to be great, there it is, must be a servant. Oh, really? Yeah. That is what the Son of Man has done. He came to serve, not to be served. If you cling to your life, you will lose it. But if you give up your life for me, you will find it. So it turns out a great life is a life lived for others. That's a great life, according to Jesus. It looks like the parents of a child with autism who have to cope with the demands of caring for somebody with special needs. If that's you here, we applaud you. You're living a great life. It looks like the man who gets up every morning and goes to work at a boring, unfulfilling job, but he does it because he wants to provide for his family. You are living a great life. It looks like the single parent juggling several jobs to give her kids a better chance in life. You're living a great life. Not this glossy, perfect teeth, perfect hair, sculling Coke. You're living a great life. When you open your home to help traumatized children, you're living a great life. This auditorium, for all I know, is full of people living great lives. And the truth is, you'll never be Facebook famous or an Instagram idol, but according to Jesus, congratulations, you're living it. And the thing I love about this definition of greatness is everybody in this room can be great. He puts greatness within the grasp of everybody. It's not top shelf. It's not, well, how much, what do you earn? Where were you educated? Did you even go to university? Come on, la, la, la. It's nothing. Jesus said, no. Greatness is the life you gain when you give yours away. We can all be great. And I'd love you to leave tonight saying, I'm going to live a great life. I am going to live a great life. So it turns out a great life looks nothing like all this glossy advertisement that's portrayed all around us. So let's keep it real, people. Let's keep it real. And so I come to the main point of what I wanted to say tonight, because that was the warm-up, the introduction. And now we're actually coming to the main point, and that is, please forget about how you appear? Who's interested in pouring the energy of their life into manicuring an appearance, appearing godly, appearing good, appearing successful, appearing happy, appearing happy? Well, why don't you just go ahead and work on the heart transformation required for you to be that, not appear. What a waste to be looking on appearances. So forget about improving the camouflage of your appearances. Your soul is longing to be itself. It's longing. You try all these other things that are just appearances, your soul will not be satisfied because it's longing to be itself. It's hardwired by its creator to be itself. Your soul will be restless until you discover that. It's not about appearance, it's about being who God created me to be. So God doesn't want a relationship with a carefully manicured illusionary self that you've constructed, all right? To him, that's a non-person. It's a non-soul. It's not the product of his creation. And so I'm going to show you a story in the Bible that illustrates how God doesn't relate to these illusionary selves, these concoctions of our own imagination, these appearances, these personas. All right, he doesn't recognize them because they're not his creation. That's not a true soul to him, and he doesn't acknowledge counterfeits. And nowhere is this more apparent than in Matthew 15. It's an unusual story. I like the unusual stories of the Bible, where Jesus, gets his G2 COVID pass, and that's what it is, isn't it? G2 thing, yeah, that's it. And he leaves Israel. He goes into the area of Tyre and Sidon, it says. So he's crossed the border, and a Gentile woman comes up to him, and the inference is she's repeatedly following them around, pleading, "Have mercy on me, O Lord, Son of David, for my daughter is possessed by a demon that torments her severely." And Jesus doesn't acknowledge her at all. It says no reply, not even a word. Unusual, wouldn't you think? I mean, what's going on here? And in the end, the disciples say, "Look, would you just send her away?" With all this begging. And then finally, Jesus turns to the woman and for the first time actually addresses her and says, "I was sent only to help God's lost sheep, the people of Israel." But she came and worshipped and pleading again said, "Lord, help me." Well, what's going on here? Why are we told in this unusual story that Jesus is totally not even acknowledging this lady? Well, because she was pretending to be someone she wasn't. And until she gave up her facade, it's like to Jesus, she wasn't there. She just wasn't there because in reality, she wasn't. Not her real self. Her real self wasn't there. An appearance and a persona had turned up. Someone putting on an appearance had turned up. And you say, "No, hang on, where's that in the story?" Well, you know how preachers say it's in the Greek root meaning of the word, blah, 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 and that's how they sort of pull a Swiftie on you and come up with this obscure, what the heck? Well, I'm not going to do that. It's actually in the story. We know he's left Israel, and we're told that this woman is not a Jew, all right? And yet she persists in using a Jewish phrase. What she was saying, "Oh, have mercy on me, O Lord, Son of David," that sounds innocent to us, but it's very Jewish. It's like a Jewish prayer she was reciting. And the Jews loved to sort of flaunt their knowledge of their genealogies and history and understanding of prophecy through little phrases like this. So this whole Lord, Son of David phrase was very Jewish. But she's a Gentile. She didn't have a clue. She probably just heard it somewhere, and it was like some lucky charm she was waving around. Apparently it meant something. And why is she doing this? Well, because desperate times call for desperate measures, and this woman's desperate to get help for her daughter. And so she thinks hiding her non-Jewish identity and using this Jew is going to get her the attention of Jesus. So pretending to be a Jew to her was her only chance, listen, of getting her needs met. And so instead of coming to Jesus in honesty, instead of just turning up as authentically and as genuine as she really is, she pretends to be somebody she isn't. And this woman keeps up this facade for some time until Jesus subtly but firmly lets her know, lady, I know you're not a Jew, okay? That's where he said, listen, I was sent only to the lost sheep of Israel, inferring you're not one of them. So, lady, give it up. Stop pretending. And that's the da-na-na-na part of the story, because now what is she going to do? Jesus has obviously got onto the fact that she's pretending, and she's been trying to manipulate him through her performance. Oh, Christians never do that. Never do that. But she's been trying to manipulate him with her performance. Now what is she going to do? Well, thanks be to God, she gets real. She gets real. She drops the act and she comes to Jesus just as she is, and she flips this borrowed Jewish prayer, and now her prayer says, oh God, help, God. And now she has Jesus' attention because she just showed up. The real her just turned up. Now, we don't need to read the rest of the story, but it turned out good. Now, because she turned up, real, authentic, raw person, Jesus, that's a soul I know. That's a soul I created. I recognize that person. Thank you for now being real with me. Now you've got my attention. And so because she gets real, she gets a revelation of the heart of God that many people in this room are still struggling to get. We're still struggling to get. And that is, God does not require you to change before he accepts who you are. He doesn't require it. For God so loved the world, not those who met his standards. God so loved the world. All right? And so, listen, but let's dial down into what was driving this woman. We can't really blame her in some ways for thinking that she had to change or pretend in order to be accepted, because that's the currency of most societies today. They trade with that currency. You become like us and we'll accept you. But our churches would never be like that. Homeless person, smelly person comes in here. We weep for their souls in our prayer meetings and sing about the lost, but here comes somebody that ain't like us. How do we go? It's uncomfortable, challenge, okay. This is somebody. No. You go and become like us and then we'll accept you. But this woman was surprised because it was actually her pretended change that was the reason behind Jesus not acknowledging her. The fact that she was appearing to be was the problem. And once she realized that, she responds beautifully. She stops pretending, and wow, there's this beautiful healing and connection. And I don't think Jesus was doing what he did to expose her, to humiliate her, actually I see this as an act of loving kindness of God, because he was waiting for her to get real. He was waiting for it. In the end, he had to help her a little bit. But all those repeated statements over and over, while she persisted in her facade, he didn't acknowledge the woman was even there, it would seem. So, in fact, his ignoring her or not acknowledging her was a beautiful thing. Why? Well, because if he had have accepted her in her persona, now to keep relating to him, she'd have to keep it up. She'd have to stay in the act. She'd have to continue to be a convincing hypocrite, an actor. And so Jesus didn't want that, and he spared her of that. And so Jesus actually brought about an authentic release of wholeness in her life. So I'm saying, let's keep it real. God doesn't recognize your carefully calculated appearances. He doesn't. He wants a relationship with you, the real you. And when the real you rocks up, you've got his attention. You come with this manicured Christianese, performance-based stuff that you've learnt rather than be transformed into being. He's going, who's that? Who's that? Where's that soul I created you to actually be? So please understand that your Creator is committed to you becoming authentically who you are. That's your gift to the world, by the way, you becoming authentically who you are. And that's why the Bible tells us that we should live in the light. And when we do, guess who else is in the light? He's in the light. Wow, I'm living in this raw, genuine, authentic honesty, this fumbling, bumbling, getting up again and having another go Christianity. And guess what? God's not there with his arms folded with this repugnant look on his face. He's going, yeah, so glad. Come on, come on. He's meeting you where you are. And so into, Jesus is so into us getting authentic with our lives. He will, from time to time, reach out and touch us in a way that's so firm and so intentional, it'll leave a permanent mark on us. The intention is to shatter our facade. That's how much he loves. He sort of did that with the woman, but sometimes some of us need a little bit more of a nudge. And I call these the beautiful wounds of Jesus. I have multiple beautiful wounds of Jesus. And why do I call them beautiful? Well, it's kind of like in the glorified body of Jesus Christ, when he appeared to his disciples, we know he still carries those nail prints in his hands and feet. And we're not turned off by that. We don't look at that and see that as something ugly or repulsive. There's something almost sacred about it, because we know those wounds are there to release life, not to end it. Well, when you get a beautiful wound from Jesus, that's the intention at all. What's a beautiful wound? Well, Genesis 32, we're told that Jacob, the schemer, the manipulator, is wrestling with this angel, and the angel smacks him on the hip, dislocates his lip, and he lives with a limp the rest of his life. But I want to tell you, if you'd have met Jacob, and said, let me pray, you're obviously, no, don't pray for me. This is my limp. This is my beautiful wound, because it was this moment that I moved from being Jacob to Israel, the Prince of God. This is my beautiful wound. This is the wound I needed to jolt me out of my persona. King David had drifted into this self-gratifying, grabbing, indulgent king where he thought he could take someone else's wife and kill off the husband and have her for himself. And the prophet Nathan rocks up and tells him this story about this rich man that took this poor man's lamb. And David's all whipped up and said, that's terrible. And then the beautiful wound came. Nathan said, you are that man. Oh, that was a beautiful wound. And just like an arrow hit his heart and snapped his eyes open, and he wept. And he thought, oh my God, what's happened to me? How did I end up in this persona that I've arrived in? The beautiful wound. Peter weeping bitterly, confronted by his weakness that crumbles under pressure, but you couldn't tell him. He was so into his persona it had gone dark. Jesus tried to tell him, nah, he's so into himself, so firmly entrenched into his know-it-all persona, he wouldn't listen. And then third time in the courtyard, you read the story of him denying Jesus. Jesus suddenly turns and looks at him. And there's something beautiful in that word look. It means to gaze, a penetrating gaze. It wasn't just a glance, it was a beautiful wound. When Jesus looked at him, oh, he felt that. It just went straight in and he wept bitterly. He needed that. He needed it. And out of the rubble, suddenly he saw this life, this ungenuine, inauthentic life he'd been living. And out of the rubble of that emerged the Peter that we know and love and took his place in the early church. And on we could go of men and women who have, God has ended their inauthentic lives with this beautiful wound. They have had these encounters with God, but come away limping but healed. I'm a limping leader, but don't pray for me. I needed those beautiful wounds. I needed them. I'm talking out of that today. I'm not just preaching sermon 21/A at you. All right? I'm actually talking to you about a reality that I've lived through, which means you're not hearing from my persona, my preaching persona, where you've got to say, the Lord would say to you, well, who's that guy, you know? And I'm in there, later drinking coffee. I'm not talking like that. Well, who was that turned up here? It's like, what is that guy? All right? Beautiful wounds. We need them. And you might be thinking, all right, well, if this is so important to God, this keeping it real, then why don't we read more about it in the Bible? Well, actually, we do, but it's put in different terminology. And one of the ways it's spoken of is fire. Fire. There you go. That's a preaching persona right there. Fire. All right. And, I've come from Pentecostal roots, so, we talk about people who are on fire for God. We say it like this, on fire for God. And then look at you like you all should feel something right now. But actually, that's totally wrong. It's not actually meant to be understood as zeal. Fire is judgment, but hang on, not condemnationary judgment, judgment of discernment, judgment that says this is real and that's rubbish, that sort of judgment. That's what fire is all about. That's why John the Baptist said, when Jesus turns up, he'll baptize you with the Holy Spirit and with fire. That's power and purity. That's what that was about. What Paul said, when we stand before Jesus, we'll be tested. Our lives will be tested with fire and chaff's going to get burned up. What was just carefully manicured Christianese was going to get burned up. And perhaps one of the best ways I can convey to you the value, the beauty, and even in the love of God, this touching of our lives by fire is to relay to you a story from my childhood. Thanks, singers and musicians. I I grew up in a part of Australia, tropical North Queensland, Cairns, and all around us during our teen years, not so much now because of the developers coming in, but look something like this, the cane fields that are there in Cairns, North Queensland. If you've got that picture, yeah. Sally and I are just feeling the vibes now. That's nostalgic. That's like where we grew up, very much like that. And so all year long, the farmer would nurture his crop, water it, fertilize it, all that. And then around harvest time, he did really strange. He did this. He put it on fire. Fire. What's that all about? Well, if you grew up in the area and knew the guy hadn't gone mad, this wasn't some destructive act, this wasn't some punishing act, this was him saying, I want to remove the rubbish from the real. I want to get rid of the chaff so that the real will remain. And so I want to say, if ever there was a day when the Church of Jesus Christ, and I'm embracing the church universally, when I say that, needs a baptism of fire, it's today, to sweep through our congregations, denominations, abominations, and burn up all the carnal religious nonsense. I mean, we started on this journey just loving Jesus. That's all it was actually meant to be about. In pursuit of our love and devotion to him, we're doing all these things. But when did it get so complicated? When did it get about positioning and politics and posturing? When did that happen? When it all, we need fire to come, sweep through the church and get us back to the roots of this is real, this is us. Sadly, in many places, the Church of Jesus Christ has become a mockery because the chaff is so big, you can't see the real anymore. The chaff that's grown up around some Christian leaders. I want to tell you, I don't want to stand before Jesus and realize it was all a show. I was a convincing actor. And you're all caught up in my act. I don't want that to happen. I want to hear, well done, good and faithful servant. That's what I want to hear. And if that's what I want to hear, I need that fire to touch me again and again and again, to anchor me, to keep me real, stop all me drifting into all this distracting nonsense, majoring on minors. Absorbed by the irrelevant. Gee, come on, let's keep it real.